Hello and a very warm welcome to your own favorite English channel, Learn English with Akhlaq Ahmed, and I'm your host and friend, Akhlaq Ahmed, an English teacher from AMU. Well, dear friends, in today's session we will proceed with the second part of uh, Silk Road. But before we start, just a humble request uh, to the new subscribers to subscribe the channel, set the bell icon to hit the bell icon and set it to all so that you can get timely notifications of all the videos that I upload. And of course, um, I'd also request all of you to like, share, and subscribe also. So you see, now let's move to our video. That is the second part of my that is Silk Road. So here, the last paragraph that we did, this paragraph tells us that while you know climbing, they came across a cairn of rocks, that is a stupa, a holy place for Buddhists, and they all took a turn round it in a clockwise manner. Uh, you know, um, they turned round the stupa in clockwise direction, as is the tradition. So this much we had done, and the otter is moving forward in his journey uh, towards Mount Kailash. He would move to new places. He would now describe his experiences in Hor and Darshan, and finally his meeting with Norbu, you see. So all these things will come up. Let's start. My headache soon cleared as we careered down the other side of the pass. Pass, the narrow passage, दरवाजे से बोलते हैं. Careered down, came down without much control. It was 2 o'clock by the time we stopped for lunch. We ate hot noodles inside a long canvas tent. Noodles are long, thin strips of pasta, what we call semi. So this tent was part of a work camp erected beside a dry salt lake. The plateau is pockmarked with salt flats and brackish lakes, vestiges of Tethys Ocean, which bordered Tibet before the great continental collision that lifted it skywards. Now, some words quickly. Uh, you see, plateau is the flat top of a mountain. The top of a mountain इन यानी जो खड़ा जहाँ पे ढाल ना हो बल्कि जो बिल्कुल फ्लैट हो लैंड जैसा हो इसको टेबल लैंड भी बोलते हैं तो इसको प्लेट्यू कहते हैं that you must have studied in geography. Pockmarked, marked with potholes or hollow areas. So it's marked with certain things like salt flats. These are area of low flat land, especially near water, and brackish lakes. Lakes having very um, unpleasantly salty water. Vestiges, that is, remains of Tethys Ocean, which bordered Tibet before the Great Continental Collision. We have read about it, how Tethys Ocean disappeared and how Himalayas were raised. Um, so we'll continue. This one was a hive of activity. Hive of activity, a place full of busy people. So this place was full of busy people. There were men with pickaxes and shovels. Both these are tools. Pickaxe is a large, heavy tool for breaking hard stones and rocks, and shovel is also a tool with a long handle and broad blade with curved edges for moving earth, snow, sand, etc. So people with pickaxes and shovels, you know, trudging back and forth in their long sheepskin coats. and salt encrusted boots. So, trudging along means moving in a tired manner with heavy steps. Um, and salt encrusted means having a thin, hard layer of salt. All wore sunglasses against the glare as a steady stream of blue trucks emerged from the blindingly white lake laden with piles of gold. Laden, loaded. Glare here means flash क्योंकि stream is a row तो एक कतार ट्रक की सफेद झील में से निकली तो सूरज में एक चमक सी पैदा हुई तो सन ग्लासेस इस वजह से उन्होंने पहन रखे थे. Late afternoon, we had reached the small town of Hor, back on the main east-west highway that followed the old trade route from Lhasa to Kashmir. Daniel, who was returning to Lhasa from found a ride in a truck, so Tasitan and I bade him farewell outside a tire repair shop. To bid farewell is to say goodbye. Bade is the past tense. We had suffered two punctures in quick succession, one after another, on the drive down from the Salt Lake, and the Sitan was eager to have them fixed, repaired, you know, set right, since they left him with no spares, with no extra tires. Besides, the second he had changed, yes, the second he had changed had been replaced by one that was as smooth as my bald head. Now here the author creates a bit of a fun. तो दूसरा टायर जो उसने बदला था वो पहले ही इतना चिकना था. ऑथर कहता है जैसे मेरी गंजी चांद. Now he'll tell us something about the town of Hor. This is important for us. You see, uh, so so please keep focused, remain focused. Look, Hor was a grim, miserable place. Grim, ugly, ill-looking, miserable, unhappy. We'll see why it is so. There was no vegetation. कोई greenery नहीं थी वहाँ पे. Um, there was no vegetation whatsoever, just dust and rocks, liberally scattered with years of accumulated refuse, accumulated, piled up, heaved up, which was unfortunate given that the town sat on the shore of Lake Mansarovar, Tibet's most venerated stretch of water. Venerated, respectable stretch of water, piece of water. तो ये बड़े हैरत की बात थी कि ये ऐसा भयानक किस्म का टाउन था. हालांकि ये मानसरोवर के किनारे बसा हुआ था जो कि तिब्बत का सबसे ज़्यादा रिस्पेक्टेबल दरिया माना जाता है. Ancient Hindu and Buddhist cosmology pinpoints Mansarovar as the source of four great Indian rivers: the Indus, the Ganges, the Satluj, and the Brahmaputra. Cosmology actually means scientific study of the universe, but here it means study of the universe according to Hinduism and Buddhism. So Hindu pinpoints means points out or recognizes. So Hinduism and Buddhism, they recognize Mansarovar as the source, the headwater of the four great Indian rivers, and they are named here. Actually, only the Satluj flows from the lake, but the headwaters of the others all rise on the nearby on the flanks of Mount Kailash. So actually, scientifically, only Satluj flows through uh, from the lake Mount Sarovar, and the headwaters, that is the source or the rivers, the source of the other three rivers, actually rise, as the author tells us, nearby on the flanks, on the sides of Mount Kailash. We were within striking distance of the great mountain, and I was eager to forge ahead. Striking distance? Distance near enough to be attacked or reached easily. So they were very close to Mount Kailash, and the author was eager, keen to forge ahead, to move ahead. But I had to wait. The Sitan told me to go and drink some tea in Ho's only cafe, uh, which, like all the other buildings in the town, was constructed with badly painted concrete. Concrete, is a building material made by mixing cement, stone, water, sand, etc. गारा जिसे बोलते हैं. तो badly painted concrete से बना हुआ था ये, and had three broken windows. The good view of the lake through one of them helped to compensate for the drought. To compensate for is to make up for. The drought is a puff or gust of cold wind. तो जो सर्द हवा वहां पे आ रही थी, उसकी एक तरह से भरपाई, पूर्ति कर दी, कमी जो परेशानी हो रही थी वो कमी दूर कर दी, क्योंकि एक विंडो से ऑथर जो था वो माउंट कैलाश को देख सकता था. I was served by a Chinese youth in military uniform who spread grease around on my table. Grease, slippery substance, with a filthy rag, that is, a dirty, uh, torn cloth, before bringing me a glass and a thermos of tea. Half an hour later, the Satan relieved me from my solitary confinement. देखिए, solitary confinement is a kind of a punishment in prison in which a criminal is kept in a lonely cell. सबसे बड़ी सजा, फांसी से भी बड़ी सजा यही मानी जाती है कि आप किसी आदमी को अकेले कहीं बंद कर दें, कोई कंपनी ना हो उसकी. So the author compares his stay in the cafe with that punishment. It was a kind of a punishment for him. So after half an hour, they decided to move on, and we drove past a lot more rocks and rubbish westwards out of the town towards Mount Kailash. तो और करने की बात ये है कि जो ऑथर ने नोट किया वो ये कि बैडली पेंटेड कंक्रीट, रबिश, डस्ट, नो ग्रीनरी, ये अजीब सी बात थी इस टाउन के बारे में. लेट्स मूव ऑन. My experience in Hor came in stark contrast to the accounts I'd read of earlier encounters, of earlier travelers' first encounters with Lake Mansarovar. Stark, complete contrast. So the author had read encounters means meeting. So the author had read about the meetings that the other travelers have had or had had with the um, place, but his experiences were in complete contrast to the experience of the earlier travelers. Now he would narrate the experience of two travelers. One is Ekai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who had arrived there in 1900, was so moved by the sanctity of the lake that he burst into tears. Sanctity, holiness. उस पे इस दरिया की पवित्रता कह लें या पाकीज़गी तकद्दुस का इतना असर हुआ कि उसके आंखों में आंसू आ गए. A couple of years later, the hallowed waters had a similar effect on a Swede, on Sven Hedin, a Swede, who wasn't prone to sentimental outbursts. So, hallowed, holy, hallowed waters, holy water. So, then another word, Swede, is one who is from Sweden. Then, prone, that means likely to. Outbursts, sudden, strong, sudden expression, strong expression of emotion. So, a couple of years later, the respectable or the respected stretch of water, the river, had a similar effect on a traveler from Sweden. Although he was not, of the temperament of the not the kind of person who was likely to, begin शेडिंग टीयर्स, मतलब वो ऐसा नहीं था कि बहुत जल्दी भावुक होकर रोने लगे, मगर उस पर भी ऐसा ही असर हुआ. मगर ऑथर को यानी आर राइटर had a very different experience. Okay, let's continue. It was dark by the time we finally left again, and after 10:30 a.m. we drew up outside a guest house in Darshan for what turned out to be uh, another troubled night. Now they reach a place called Darshan, and there they stay in a guest house. Kicking around in the open air rubbish dump that passed for the town of Hor had set off my cold once more. Set off started. तो ये टाउन ऑफ होर से जब निकले वहाँ पे इतना कचरा रिफ्यूज रबिश वगैरह था. वहाँ पे ऑथर की कोल्ड जो है वो आई मीन इट स्टार्टेड. दो इफ ट्रूथ बी टोल्ड इट हैड नेवर क्वाइट डिसअपियर्ड विद माय हर्बल टी. तो आपको याद होगा होर में इसने हर्बल टी पी थी, उससे भी इस पे कोई असर नहीं पड़ा. अ, रात को इसको अक्सर सोने में परेशानी होती थी, तो अब एक और रात ऐसी गुजर रही है कि जिसमें कैसे सोने में परेशानी होगी, एंड ही इज गोइंग टू डिस्क्राइब दैट. वन ऑफ माय nostrils was blocked again. Nostrils, one side of the nose, and as I lay down to sleep, I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me with sufficient oxygen. My watch told me I was at 4,760 meters. It wasn't much higher than Ravu, and there I had been gasping for oxygen several times every night. To gasp is to breathe with mouth wide open, hapna. I had grown accustomed to these nocturnal disturbances by now, but they still scared me. Nocturnal, relating to night or occurring at night. Accustomed, habitual, scared, frightened. So, although the author had become habitual of these disturbances occurring at night, but he was still, I mean, these disturbances still frightened him. Tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. अब चूंकि ये नाक से सांस नहीं ले पा रहा था, तो इसने मुंह से सांस लेना शुरू कर दी. After a while, I switched to single nostril power, which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen, allowing to enter. But just as I was drifting off, I woke up abruptly. Drifting off, falling asleep. I woke up abruptly. अचानक ही इससे जाग उठा. Something was wrong. My chest felt strangely heavy, and I um, sat up, a movement that cleared my nasal passages almost instantly and relieved my uh, feeling in my chest. अजीब बात थी, जैसे ये बैठा तो इसके नेजल पैसेजेस भी क्लियर हो गए, और चेस्ट में जो प्रेशर था वो भी जो था वो रिलीव हो गया. क्यूरियस, आई थॉट, स्ट्रेंज. देखिए ये जब हम हाइट्स पे जाते हैं तो ये सारी चीज़ें होती हैं माउंटेन्स पे, क्योंकि जो प्लेन्स में रहते हैं लोग, उनको उस प्रेशर की आदत नहीं होती, तो उसकी वजह से ये सब होता है. बट द ऑथर इज डिस्क्राइबिंग इट इन अ वेरी मिस्टीरियस वे. यू सी, उसको जैसा महसूस हुआ, जैसा लगा उस वक्त, बिकॉज इट वाज हिज फर्स्ट एक्सपीरियंस ऑन द माउंटेन्स. आई ले बैक डाउन एंड ट्राइड अगेन. फिर इसने कोशिश की सोने की. सेम रिजल्ट. I was on the point of disappearing in the land of Nod. Land of Nod means sleep, when something told me not to. अचानक से जैसे अंदर से किसी ने कहा कि नहीं, सोना नहीं है. It must have been those emergency electrical impulses again. ये electrical impulses, इससे आप ये समझ लें strong wishes. But this was not the same as on previous occasions. लेकिन अब में और पहले में फ़र्क था. क्या फ़र्क था? This time I wasn't gasping for breath. इस बारे में सांस लेने में परेशानी नहीं हो रही थी. I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. But, he somehow felt that he should not sleep. Sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as I lay down, my sinuses filled and my chest was odd. Sinuses, hollow spaces in the head. सर में जो वेन्स होती हैं वो साइनसेस होते हैं. तो साइनसेस फिल हो गए और चेस्ट भी ऑड स्ट्रेंज फील होने लगा. आई ट्राइड प्रॉपिंग माई सेल्फ upright against the wall, supporting myself up, against the wall. तो इसने दीवार का सहारा लेके सोने की कोशिश नहीं की. But now I couldn't manage to relax enough to drop off. To drop off, to fall into light sleep. ऊँघना. अब ये इतना भी रिलैक्स नहीं कर सका कि ऊँघ सके. सोना तो दूर की बात है. I couldn't put my finger on the reason. That is, I couldn't understand the reason. But I was afraid to go to sleep. A little voice inside me was saying that if I did, I might never wake up again. ये है, देखिए, उसको अंदर से एहसास हुआ कि अगर सो जाता है तो फिर कभी नहीं रुक पाएगा. I stayed awake all night. Okay, so this is one of the experience of the author at night. अब देखिए next morning क्या होता है. The Siddharth took me to the Dachan Medical College the following morning. The medical college at Dachan was new and looked like a monastery. Monastery, a place where monks live and pray from outside, with a very solid door that led to a large courtyard. We found the consulting room, which was dark and cold and occupied by a Tibetan doctor. So, consulting room where patients are consulted. Now, look at this. There was the Tibetan doctor who wore none of the paraphernalia I had been expecting. Paraphernalia, a large number of personal possessions, objects, or equipments that we need for a particular activity. बहुत सारा तामझाम जो हमें ज़रूरी हो किसी खास काम के लिए, जैसे इस डॉक्टर के केस में नो वाइट कोट. He was not wearing any white coat at all, and he had no other instruments also. So he looked like any other Tibetan with a thick pullover and a woolen cap, woolly cap. I explained my sleepless symptoms. Symptoms, signs that something exists here, signs of illness, and my sudden aversion to lying down. Aversion, strong dislike. He shot me a few questions while feeling the veins in my artery. To shoot a few questions, यानी तड़ातड़ दो चार questions पूछ लेना. जल्दी से उसने दो चार questions पूछे. It's a cold, he said, finally through Daniel. That is, Daniel translated. The doctor could not speak English. So it's a cold and the effects of altitude, that is, effects of height. I'll give you something for it. I asked him if he thought I'd recover enough to be able to do the Kora. Oh, yes, he said, you will be fine. I walked out of the medical college clutching a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of paper. Clutching, holding tightly, screws of paper, twisted pieces of paper, जिसको पुड़िया बोलते हैं. और ये लफ्ज़ जो है एनवेलप कह देते हैं इसे लोग, ये गलत है, सही तलफ़ुज़ इसका प्रोनंसिएशन ऑनवेलप होता है जब हम इसको एज अ वर्ब एज अ नाउन बोलते हैं. ऑन एंड एज अ वर्ब इट इज एनवेलप. एनवेलप. ओके. I had a 5 day course of Tibetan medicine. 5 day treatment course here means treatment of Tibetan medicine, which I started right away. I opened an after breakfast package and found it contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. It tasted just like cinnamon. Cinnamon is an aromatic spice, दालचीनी जिसे कहते हैं. The contents of the lunchtime and bedtime packages were less obviously identifiable. Both contained small spherical brown pellets. Pellets, small pills, गोल जो गोलियां होती हैं, गोल में गेंद की शक्ल की. They looked suspiciously like sheep dung, but of course I took them. तो मतलब उसे ऐसा लगा जैसे ये दवा ना हो के शीप डंग है, लेकिन फिर भी बहरहाल उसने वो दवा ली. That night, after my first day's course, I slept very soundly. Sound sleep, गहरी नींद. तो उस रात वो आराम से गहरी नींद सोया. Like a log, not like a dead man. Not like a dead man, but like a log. लकड़ी का कोई बड़ा सा तख्ता जैसे पड़ा हो, हिले ना अपनी जगह से. इतनी अच्छी नींद आई. Once, देखिए, this is very important. Once he saw that I was going to live, the Satan left me to return to Lhasa. Now the Satan also left him because he had reached Arjun. As a Buddhist, he told me he knew that it did not really matter if I passed away, but he thought it would be bad for business. यहाँ हमें पता चलता है कि तसितान ने ऑथर की इतनी मदद क्यों की. ऑथर से उसने कहा कि भाई, क्योंकि वो तो एक बुद्धिस्ट है, इसलिए अगर ऑथर मर भी जाए तो उसके ऊपर कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, लेकिन बिजनेस के लिए ये अच्छा नहीं होगा. सो दे दीज गाइड्स आर वेरी प्रोफेशनल. दे हेल्प द टूरिस्ट बिकॉज दे वांट द बिजनेस टू ग्रो. Darchan did not look so horrible after a good night's sleep. It was still dusty, partially derelict. Derelict, abandoned, lonely, and punctuated by heaps of rubble. Rubble are broken pieces of stone or bricks and refuse. But the sun shone brilliantly. Shone is the past tense of shine in a clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain to the south gave me a vision of the Himalayas, commanded by huge snow-capped mountain. Snow-capped, covered with snow. तो ये बर्फ से ढका पहाड़ से दिख सकता था जिसका नाम था गोरिल्ला मंदाता, with just a wisp of cloud suspended over its summit. देखिए, wisp is otherwise is a bundle of hay or grass. यहाँ पे as a metaphor use हुआ है. Wisp of cloud means long, thin line of cloud which suspended, which was hanging over its summit, that is peak or top. The town had a couple of rudimentary general stores. देखिए, जनरल स्टोर्स तो आपको पता ही क्या होता है. अब उसमें भी इन्होंने वर्ड रूडिमेंट्री इस्तेमाल किया है. दैट इज बेसिक एंड सिंपल. Stores selling basic and simple things. What they sell, selling Chinese cigarettes, soap, and other basic provisions. That is food and drink, as well as the usual strings of prayer flags. In front of one, men gathered in the afternoon for a game of pool. Pool is a game with for two people with 16 colored balls played on a table. The battered table looking supremely incongruous in the open air, while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of the narrow brook that babbled down past my guest house. So the battered table, the table that was used quite a lot, बहुत घिसी पिटी table थी वो, and it was looking supremely, extremely incongruous, unsuitable in the open air. एक तरफ तो नज़ारा था कि there were nearby women washing their hair in the icy cold water, और दूसरी तरफ एक बहुत ही भद्दी सी table. So obviously, you know, uh, the two things do not match. उसमें कोई similarity नहीं है beauty में, इसीलिए unsuitable था. Babbled flowed with a sound. Darchan felt relaxed and unhurried. Unhurried, there was not much activity. ऐसा लग रहा था बहुत ही रिलैक्स किस्म की जगह है. सब लोग nobody looked in a hurry. इस ऐसा कोई साइन नहीं लग रहा था कि कोरा जो है वो शुरू होने वाली है. But for me, um, it came with a significant disadvantage. There were no pilgrims. सबसे बड़ी परेशानी ये थी कि pilgrims नहीं थे. अब author अकेला है, याद रखिए. I had been told that at the height of the pilgrimage season, the town was bustling with visitors. That is, at the peak of जब पूरी पीक टाइम होता है जब पिलग्रिमेज का, तो ये जो जगह जो होती है पिलग्रिमेज सीजन में, ये टाउन लोगों से भरा होता है. बस्लिंग विद पीपल, क्राउडिंग विद पीपल. Many brought their own accommodation, enlarging the settlement around its edges. तो बहुत से लोग अपना अपना accommodation भी लेके आते हैं as they set up their tents which spill down onto the plains. Spill down, spread out onto the plains. पहाड़ों पे जाके ये अपने टेंट लगाते हैं और बढ़ते 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 वो प्लेन्स तक आ जाते हैं. I had timed my arrival for the beginning of the season, but it seemed I was too early. ऐसा लग रहा था कि वो बहुत जल्दी आ गया था. One afternoon, I sat pondering over the options over a glass of tea in Darchan's only cafe. Pondering, he was thinking over his options. After all consideration, I concluded that they were very severely limited, very much limited, you know. Clearly, I hadn't made much progress with my self-help program on positive thinking. देखिए, this is important. The author's purpose for this journey was to develop positive thinking and an attitude of self-help, habit of self-help, and attitude of positive thinking. ये इस तरह की जर्नी से इसी तरह की टेंडेंसीज डेवलप करने में फ़ायदा होता है. अदरवाइज द ऑथर वाज अ क्रिश्चियन. ही हैड नो इंटरेस्ट इन परफॉर्मिंग द बुद्धिस्ट पिलग्रिमेज. तो इसीलिए उसने ये डेंजरस जर्नी जो है वो अंडरटेक की थी. मगर अभी इसमें कोई ख़ास प्रोग्रेस नहीं हो पाई थी. इन माई डिफेंस, it hadn't been easy with all my sleeping difficulties. तो इसको यानी जाहिर बात है इसके लिए परेशानियां भी बहुत सी थी. मिसाल के तौर पे ये sleeping difficulties. But however I looked at it, I could only wait. So the only thing he could do is to wait. The pilgrimage trail was well trodden. Pilgrimage trail or route followed for the pilgrimage. It was well trodden, much used. But I didn't fancy doing it alone. Fancy, imagine. But the author could not imagine doing it alone. उसकी हिम्मत नहीं थी कि वो अकेले करता. Kora was seasonal because parts of the route were liable to blockage by snow. Liable, likely to blockage. ये please learn two words: seasonal and seasoned. Seasonal means occurring in a particular season, किसी एक मौसम में होने वाला. और seasoned कहते हैं evergreen या सदाबहार. So please remember the difference. So Kora was seasonal. ये seasonal थी क्योंकि um, कुछ रास्ते के कुछ पार्ट्स ऐसे थे जो बर्फ से रुकावट उनमें पैदा हो जाती थी. I had no idea whether or not the snow had cleared. उसे ये भी पता नहीं था कि snow clear हुई है कि नहीं. But I wasn't encouraged by the chunks of dirty ice that still clung to the banks of Darchin's brook. तो बहरहाल ये है कि he noticed that there were chunks, huge pieces, solid huge pieces of dirty ice that were clinging to the banks of Darchin's brook. Brook stream, झरना जो था वहाँ पे. Since the Sitan had left, I hadn't come across uh, anyone in Darchin with enough English to answer even this most basic question. So you see, language was the problem. He hadn't met anybody who could even answer this simple question whether the snow had drifted or not. Sorry, just a minute. Um, yes. So now he will describe his meeting with Norbu. We are towards the end of the lesson now. Until that is, I met Norbu. The cafe was small, dark, cavernous, with a long metal stove that ran down the middle. So he was sitting in Darchan's cafe, which was small and dark and cavernous, um, looking like a cave, you know. कैवेनस वैसे वेरी लार्ज को भी कहते हैं, लेकिन वो पहले स्मॉल कह चुका है तो लार्ज का मीनिंग यहाँ अप्लाई नहीं होगा. लुकिंग लाइक अ केव. इट हैड अ लॉन्ग मेटल स्टोव जो दैट रैन डाउन द मिडल, जो कि कैफे के बीच में, बीचों बीच में, यानी कि जल रहा था, चूल्हा जो था वहां पे. द वॉल्स एंड सीलिंग्स वर रीच्ड इन शीट्स ऑफ stripped variety, multicolored plastic. So wreathed in means covered with. So the walls and ceilings were covered with multicolored plastic of the stripped variety. तो किस तरह की प्लास्टिक थी ये? स्ट्रिप्ड मीन्स लाइंड वेराइटी, यानी जो पैटर्न्स बने हुए थे उसमें लाइनें बनी हुई थी. किस तरह की लाइनें? ब्रॉड, ब्लू, रेड एंड वाइट. That is made into stout voluminous shopping bags sold all over China and in most countries of Asia as well as Europe. So this plastic, is made into stout, that is strong, voluminous, large shopping bags, and they are sold throughout Asia and Europe. As such, plastic must rate as one of China's most successful exports along the Silk Road today. अब देखिए ये वो मीटिंग डिस्क्राइब करेगा. The cafe had a single window beside which I had taken up position so that I could see the pages of my notebook. I had also brought a novel with me to help pass the time. Norbu saw my book when he came in and asked me with a gesture if he could sit opposite me at my rickety table. Gesture, a movement with head, hands, and face. इशारे से उसने पूछा if he could sit opposite me at my rickety table. Rickety, almost falling to pieces. टूटी फूटी जो मेज थी. You English? He inquired after he had ordered tea. I told him I was, and we struck up a conversation. That is, we started a conversation. Strike up, start. I didn't think he was from those parts. He was wearing a wind cheater and metal rimmed spectacles of Western style. Metal rimmed, समझ लीजिए पहले. Rimmed framed. So spectacles having a frame of steel. Sorry, metal. of Western style. और अब दूसरा word इसमें है wind cheater, which you may know, kind of a jacket that protects you from wind, a thin jacket. He was Tibetan, he told me, but worked in Beijing at China's Academy of Social Sciences in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. I assumed he was on some sort of field work. A field work, some sort of research or study. Yes and no, he said. I have come to do the Kora. उसने कहा कि वो कोरा करने के लिए है. My heart jumped. So my heart jumped metaphorically means the author felt extremely happy. Norbu had been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in the various works of Buddhist literature for many years. He told me he had never actually done it himself. Papers तो लिख रहा था मगर उसने खुद कोरा कभी नहीं किया था इस वजह से वो आया था. When the time came for me to tell him what brought me to Darchan, his eyes lit up. His eyes lit up. He felt extremely happy. उसकी आंखें चमक उठी. We could be a team. He he said excitedly. Two academics who have escaped from the library. Academics, academicians. दो ऐसे लोग जिन्हें पढ़ने में इंटरेस्ट है वो सीखने के लिए लाइब्रेरी से बाहर निकल के ऐसी जगह पे आए जहाँ प्रैक्टिकली सीख सकें. Perhaps my positive thinking strategy was working after all. तो अब आथर को लगा कि हाँ अब उसकी पॉजिटिव थिंकिंग स्ट्रेटजी जो है उसमें कुछ इम्प्रूवमेंट आ रहा है. My initial relief at meeting Norbu was meeting Norbu, who was also staying in the guest house, was tempered by the realization that he was almost as ill-equipped for as I was for the pilgrimage. Tempered by, moderated by, made less severe. Realization, the act of becoming aware. तो यानी ill-equipped, not fully prepared, सामान की कमी होना. तो इसको जो एक्साइटमेंट हुआ था ऑथर को वो थोड़ा सा कम हो गया जब उसे ही पता चला कि नोरबू भी जर्नी के लिए पूरी तरह तैयार नहीं था. उसके पास भी कोई साजो सामान नहीं था. He kept telling me how fat he was and how hard it was going to be. Very high up, he kept reminding me. So tiresome to walk. He wasn't really a practicing Buddhist, it transpired. Transpired, got revealed. Revealed or came to be known. तो ऐसा अंदाजा हुआ पता लगा कि वो practicing Buddhist नहीं था. But he had enthusiasm and he was of course a Tibetan. तो ये समझ लीजिए practicing Buddhist. Who is a practicing person? A practicing person is a person who strongly believes in a religion and follows its laws and practices strictly. यानी एक तो ये कि अब मिसाल के तौर पे कोई अपने आप को मुस्लिम कहता है या हिंदू कहता है लेकिन उस रिलीजन को पूरी तरह फॉलो नहीं करता, खाली नाम से हिंदू मुसलमान है, तो वो is not a practicing follower of a religion. The practicing follower of a religion is one who strictly follows the religion. So Norbu was not a practicing Buddhist, although I had originally envisaged making the trek in the company of devout believers. जहाँ पे कुछ वर्ड समझ लेते हैं. पहले सबसे बात तो ये है कि ये लफ्ज़ जो है इसको बोलने सही तलफ़ुज़ इसका है envisaged. S is equal to Z. Envisaged. Envisaged means imagined. Initially, the author had planned or imagined that he would take up this difficult journey. Trek is a arduous journey or difficult journey in the company of devout believers. Devout, very devoted believers, those who follow the practices of the religion. तो पहले तो उसने ये सोचा था कि बहुत ही जो practicing Buddhist हैं उनके साथ जाएगा. लेकिन on reflection, I decided that perhaps Norbu would turn out to be the ideal companion. He suggested we hired some yaks. Yaks are animals of cow family having long hair and horns, of course, having horns and long hair. So he suggested that we hire some yaks to carry our luggage, which I interpreted as a good sign. And he had no intention of prostrating himself all round the mountain. Prostrating, lying flat with face facing downward, you know, पेट के बल लेट जाना. तो जिस तरह से हम सजदा करते हैं तो ये पूरे पहाड़ पे उसी तरह से पेट के बल लेट के और अपना इनकी एक बुद्धिस्ट की प्रैक्टिस होती है. दैट इज prostrating. Not possible, he cried, collapsing across the table in hysterical laughter. Collapsing, falling down and relaxing. Hysterical, extremely funny. So he said, not possible. संभव ही नहीं है, तो मुमकिन ही नहीं है. It wasn't his style. And anyway, his tummy was too big. Tummy, stomach, तोंद जिसे कहते हैं, उसका पेट बहुत बड़ा था. So obviously, it was not possible for him to prostrate like that. So this marks the end of the lesson, dear friends. You see, we have completed, um, you know, Silk Road. The author, I'll sum it up now briefly in a few sentences. The author starts his journey from Ravu, and then, of course, passing through various plains and mountains. Uh, you can gather details. आप फिर details जो हैं वो इसकी पढ़ के कलेक्ट कर सकते हैं. रावो से स्टार्ट किया इसने, फिर ये प्लेन्स में से होता हुआ जहाँ इसे गजेल्स वगैरह मिले, माउंटेन्स ऊंचे नीचे रास्तों पे से होता हुआ, खतरनाक रास्तों में से वहाँ से ये गुजरता हुआ टाउन ऑफ होर में पहुंचा, जहाँ उसने देखा कि रबिश के हीप्स थे. और वो वहाँ उसका एक्सपीरियंस जो था वो कंप्लीट कंट्रास्ट था उसका जो उसने पढ़ा था पहले ट्रेवलर्स का एनकाउंटर विद होर. क्योंकि ये बहुत ही रिस्पेक्टेबल, जो मोस्ट रिस्पेक्टेड रिवर जो है वहाँ पे ये शहर आबाद था. तो पहले जो विजिटर्स आए थे वो तो उसकी पाकीज़गी को देख के उनकी आंखों में आंसू आ गए थे. But the author, found that it had no greenery and it was a dirty, miserable, ill-looking place. Then he came to Darchen and realized that he had been a little early. थोड़ा सा पहले आ गया था. Darchen was a relaxed place. वहाँ पे कुछ experiences इसने describe किए हैं. दार्चन में उसकी first night जो थी वो पिछली रातों की तरह बहुत ही डिस्टर्बिंग थी. वो सो नहीं सका. Then next day he went to the medical college. Tasitan उसे medical college ले गया and he took medicine and recovered. Then Tasitan of course left him, telling him that he helped him because he thought that otherwise it would be bad for business. उसने क्यों मदद की उसकी? वैसे तो वो बुद्धिस्ट था, उसमें फर्क नहीं पड़ता था कि ऑथर जिंदा रहे या मर जाए, लेकिन ये बिजनेस के लिए बुरा होता. अब ऑथर अकेला रह गया था और उसे कोई नहीं मिल पा रहा था कि जो ये भी बता सके कि भाई बर्फ पिघली है या नहीं पिघली है, जर्नी स्टार्ट करनी चाहिए या नहीं. फाइनली ही मेट नोरबू, who was not a practicing Buddhist but who had come to perform the Kora. He was working in Beijing, in China's uh, Institute of Social Sciences. तो इन दोनों ने इरादा किया कि ये एक टीम बना के जाएंगे. Although Norbu had no intention of prostrating himself. तो इस तरह से ऑथर की एक्सपीरियंसेस जो हैं, अब इसमें some of his experiences may be biased, biased भी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन by and large he has honestly narrated his experiences that he had in the journey from Ravu to Mount Kailash. So this is the whole text. Uh, in another short video that I would upload, um, um, I'd share with you the answers to the questions at the end. So at this note, we stop, and until we meet again, take good care of yourself, and remember me in your prayers also. Thank you very much.